Welcome to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast.
Every week, they talk about the Vancouver Canucks with a fair amount of nonsense thrown in.
Sure, they're never the first with the news, nor the best connected, and definitely more off the rails than on.
But they've been talking puck the longest, and that counts for something, right?
So strap in for the longest running, best mediocre Canucks Hockey Podcast.
It's C4 with Chris and Anna.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. It's the longest running, it's the best mediocre, and it's one where we just got off a conversation about sneezes, which you won't get to hear anything of because it was before we clicked record. Hey, Anna, how you doing?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
Not bad. You know, I kind of like this new thing where we sort of pull the curtain back on whatever it was that we were talking about before we clicked record, but then we don't provide any context.
Yeah. It didn't really make sense in context either, but yeah,
no,
that's what we were talking about.
But sometimes those who support us through, buy me a coffee or what is it that you and I call it?
Buy me a pint.
That's right. And get access to C4 off the rails. Sometimes that conversation sort of, jumps into OTR, but I don't know if we're going to spend OTR talking about sneezes. I say that, but maybe we'll. Only way you'll know.
Yeah.
Sign up to a monthly.
You got to do that to find out.
Or whatever. What have you been up to this past week?
Dealing with Vancouver snow. So, I'm anyone of our listeners that lives in the rest of Canada or any sort of locale.
Hey, we got more than just a few flakes,
right?
Which would still screw us up.
But that's the thing. It's the same.
Armageddon.
And where I grew up, in the UK, it's the same thing. Cannot deal with snow, even though it happens pretty regularly. So in Vancouver, it happens badly, once a year, and that'll be it. It'll be 3 days of bad snow, 4 days maybe, but every single time it messes the whole city up. So, yeah, buses can't go anywhere, people can't drive properly. We have, one snowplow for the whole city, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, they knew it was coming, and even knowing that it's coming still doesn't help.
No.
Yeah. It wasn't as bad as the past sort of few years snowfalls have been. At least for us in
I was going to say,
Vancouver.
Yeah, how was it in the burbs?
We got more snow where I am comparative to others. But the roads themselves were generally good, side roads.
Yeah, the side roads do not ever get cleared.
No.
And if you don't I actually don't know how it works in the rest of the country, but in Vancouver, you're supposed to clear your own path,
Sidewalk.
the sidewalk in front of your house. But that's
often very few people do that.
Yeah, and I would say people are generally good, but someone's away, or there's a part of the sidewalk that doesn't belong to anyone, or it's the back of a building. And sorry, I just hit my hand there. But it just means you can't get anywhere. It's kind of impossible to get around. So yeah, that's what I've been dealing with. Whilst also watching the Canucks.
Who have been, dealing with their own things, which we'll get into this episode, or maybe dealing with less things. Who knows? Snow didn't keep the Canucks from getting into Vancouver, something that had occurred many years ago, and resulted in a game being rescheduled against, I think it was the San Jose Sharks. If my research is correct, I drop this wisdom every so often. Super Bowl happened to take place tonight.
I did Google NFL today to see who won.
Well, that's good for you. For those who did not watch the Super Bowl, it was more bowl, less super. The game, I get it. If you're an Eagles fan, you might have said, "Hey, that's a great game." But realistically, the Eagles were so dominant; it wasn't a great game.
Right.
It wasn't
but
exciting.
what I do
over early.
Glean from my side of the Super Bowl, and what I mean is watching hockey players predict Super Bowl, because that's the only NFL content I get, is that it was predicted to be, everyone wanted the Eagles to win unless you were a Chiefs fan, but everyone was saying, but the Chiefs are probably going to win. So that is, them having a dominant win is at least interesting from narrative perspective.
Yeah, the Chiefs were in it at the start.
Well, both teams show up.
Maybe one series, right? Yeah, it wasn't close. Halftime show with Kendrick Lamar.
Very cool.
I don't necessarily listen to Kendrick Lamar's music. Like I
kind
know,
of like his vibe more than I like his music.
A couple of songs.
Yeah.
I don't know lyrics, but I mean that's not a Kendrick Lamar thing. Lyrics are just not my forte. In fact, there are probably songs that I'm like, oh, that's a banger, and then he tell me the lyrics, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
banging. So apparently those who enjoy and appreciate Kendrick Lamar and his music and the sound, they loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it had good.
It wasn't as like a flashy as some seasons past.
Yeah, but that's probably kind of goes with the vibe. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that wasn't his thing. His was just
and
straight up performance.
Political context, it kind of makes sense not to be that way.
Yeah. Samuel L. Jackson was involved as Uncle Sam.
Interesting.
Dressed up as Uncle Sam.
Sure.
Yeah. But no, we're here to talk about the Vancouver Canucks. So the Vancouver Canucks, since making moves last week, and therefore the episode previous that we talked about, we're going to be able to extrapolate what has happened since. They had a game at home. They had a game on the road. They had a game at home, which felt like a game on the road. And surprisingly, didn't do too badly. And then there's no week that will be because it's Four Nations. And honest to goodness, I'm not even sure what countries are involved. There could be
There's four of them.
But let's get into the week that was with Rewind. Looking back at our prognostications, we really didn't give the Canucks much.
But that's us, typical negative C4.
You're right. We're the most pessimistic, best mediocre, longest running podcast out there. I'm going to have to our tagline's going to be longer than
I know, especially in
episode of C4.
Going to have some oxymorons in there.
Yeah, but no, the game against the Avalanche, the Vancouver Canucks were in bend, don't break mode for about the first 5 minutes, maybe 10. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if the Avs simply ran out of energy or if the Vancouver Canucks suddenly started to realize that, hey, we're actually not that bad. And hey, this is what happens when we start moving the puck quickly.
Yeah, I mean, right, like that's kind of what we said at the tail end of last week, is that Canucks, the results weren't necessarily there, but the speed at which the Canucks were playing looked so much better. And that's also credit to new players, but also maybe some old players finding their old speed again.
Yeah. But, it was to, let the cat out of the bag, a 3-0 shutout for Thatcher Demko. Prior to the game, when it was announced that Demko was going to be the starter, there were quite a few people who were like, oh, really? You don't want to go with Lankinen? And honest to goodness, Demko looked good to the point where I actually commented, is old Demko back? Like, I'm not sure who it was that he made the save against, but we're talking like old school Demko, completely, up in the press box, positioning wise, coming across the net, just a glove hand save.
Yeah.
Like the saves that you and I have said that Canucks goaltenders need to make to keep this team in a game for them to win. Demko had not been making them to this point since his return. And he made that one and a few others.
Yeah, and I think I jokingly said it during the Detroit game. Tweeted out, is Demko back? But, I was kind of just fishing for responses at that point. But it was hard not to sort of think, watching the Colorado game, that maybe he is, just because of the types of saves he was making. But yeah, he thoroughly deserved that shutout, honestly. He was good value for it.
Jake DeBrusk got himself a beautiful goal. Brock Besser is scoring goals to ensure that his next contract with whatever team it happens to be is a good one. And Drew O'Connor scores himself his first goal as a Vancouver Canuck, an empty net goal. Doesn't matter how it goes in. At the end of the day, it's on the score sheet. Drew seemed very excited by this. One thing that was very apparent is that we saw the Vancouver Canucks stick up for each other.
Yes, and it did help that Colorado seemed to have a complete emotional breakdown on the ice. Like, they were just, like, had lost control, and they're not a team that often does that, so it was kind of fun to see Canucks be the one to precipitate that, and yeah, it did seem like I don't want to be too simplistic, that, you know, the conflict is resolved, everyone's, like, eating a cake made of rainbows, but, like, it does seem to be like there is maybe light at the end of the tunnel, way forward. Maybe there is some tension that has been lifted just because the situation has been resolved. Either way, so...
You know, Brock Besser's goal was on the power play. The power play looked good, but see, they had that two-man advantage when Miles Wood lost the plot.
Yeah.
And you know how many shots the Vancouver Canucks got on net during that full 2-minute two-man advantage?
Was it 0?
0. So for those keeping score at home, Miles Wood goes to the box with what ultimately works out to be a double minor. Mm-hmm. And Cale Makar, or was it Cale Makar?
Well, you have to finish your sentence for me to know what you mean.
Well, no. So, I mean, I'm trying to think. He had a double minor, and then, I mean, the way it worked out, because I think I'm trying to recap the number of penalties that Colorado had. Tyler Myers got 2, but it ultimately worked out that it was a 4-minute power play, courtesy of Miles Wood. Cale Makar then takes a penalty himself, so the Vancouver Canucks now have a 5-on-3 for at least a full 2 minutes. They got 0 shots. They were throwing it around. I'll give them credit. Yeah. And they were trying to throw pucks towards the net, but they were having trouble hitting the net when they were throwing it towards. And I'm not going to fault them. Like, they won 3-0. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. But it was only 2-0 until Drew O'Connor scored that empty net goal. And that's not a team you'd like to, keep in the game. It still required Demko to show up. The other thing is that you would think a team who had a full 5-on-3 for 2 minutes, and again, we're talking also the time at the start of that and the end of that for the rest of the power play, would get more than 8 shots in the period. But hey,
yeah,
who's really keeping track?
Well, the NHL.
That's true.
There is someone whose job it is to do that.
Yeah. But the Vancouver Canucks get 3-0 victory. Thatcher Demko gets a shutout. Thatcher looks like old Thatcher. Hey, maybe there's something here. They then have to go on the road because, hey, what's the NHL schedule if you don't have a 1-game road trip before you have a nice 2-week break? They go down to San Jose. This was the game that you and I had agreed that the Vancouver Canucks needed to win. They did win it.
Right. But we did just say, like, no matter how much Canucks are struggling, it's San Jose. Mm-hmm. So you would think it wouldn't be as difficult as Canucks made it look. No. Now,
the Vancouver Canucks and the San Jose Sharks were playing a whole lot of hockey. I don't recall there being a moment that was, my goodness, it feels like the Vancouver Canucks are going to take this game. It felt more like San Jose was staying in a game, or Vancouver was keeping them in the game. Like, San Jose looked a lot better than maybe they should have, and the Vancouver Canucks didn't look as good as we saw them 2 nights previous against Colorado.
Yeah, it's like a team like San Jose really can't be taking 2.5 periods to score, like, against, like, it did look just a bit lackluster. You wouldn't say, San Jose has had their best game of the year, so that is why Canucks struggled. But they did look like they were in it right until the very end, and obviously after Dakota Joshua scored, like, San Jose did get that game-tying goal with a minute and a half to go. Well, and of course, who scored it?
Yeah, Tyler Toffoli, set buddy. Up by Hedl, who must have thought he no longer played for the Vancouver.
I mean, he's played for many different teams. He's very confused. The boy's been hit on the head a lot.
Like, if you did not watch the game or you missed the goal, so the Vancouver Canucks are trying to, kill the clock. I don't know who it was, who the defenseman was. Might have been Ronick, might have been Myers. plays the puck out a corner to Hedel. Hedel is open. Now, Hedel can fire the puck down the ice. He could try to throw it up off the glass. Heck, he could throw it behind the net. He could throw it back in the corner. Like, the goal here is you want to burn the clock.
Yeah.
Hedel throws it to the front of the net. Like, the one little...
Yeah, because even, like, icing, it's
puck.
fine in that position. If you're really in trouble, ice the puck. It doesn't matter.
He throws it in front of the net where Tyler Toffoli says thank you and scores.
Yeah.
Actually, Tyler didn't score on the shot. Tyler scored on the subsequent rebound.
Actually, it was not the subsequent rebound. It was the rebound after that.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah,
the point is...
No, but I just mean, like...
The Hedel setup was what transpired to be
like,
a Tyler Toffoli goal.
Demko tried his real level best.
I mean... Everyone, to a person, was like, Demko deserved the shutout.
Yeah.
And Hedel
said, no.
He done messed up there.
Yeah.
But not often do you get to see a penalty shot in a 3-on-3 overtime.
But apparently when Canucks and Jake Woolman are in the same building.
Oh, really?
Well, Jake Woolman was the one who got the OT penalty shot for Detroit when he yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anywho, Drew O'Connor got to prove his worth. He came in so slow. Like, I actually made, when he was coming in...
Which is like, not his want. He is pace. Very fast.
Yeah. I had commented to Marnie. I'm like, oh, well, he's not going to score. And boy, do I not know hockey.
There's lots of listeners yelling at the podcast right now. Yeah, I just love penalty shots so much. Like, I know I'm like one of the few people that also love shootouts, so this is...
No, I don't like the shootout.
Yeah, I know you don't.
I
Most
don't mind
people
penalty
don't.
shot. I don't like the shootout.
But, like...
I'd rather more 3-on-3.
I get that. But this...
3-on-3 with a shot clock.
Okay, sure. But, like, something that annoys me a lot about refs, which, you know, many things. But one thing is that they're, quote-unquote, afraid to decide the game. So they don't make decisions they should. And so there have been way fewer penalty shots than there should be. When they just call a penalty when it's such a clear, you know, like, one-on-one with a goalie, and then they're just like, no, we'll just call that a penalty because they don't want to decide the game.
Yeah, I could have gone and looked this up while you were talking because the thought had just come to me, but I didn't. Drew O'Connor got a shot attempt off. Like, Macklin Celebrini, you know, definitely hooked him or slashed him. I think they called it hooking. But Drew O'Connor still got a shot off. And my understanding was that a penalty shot was awarded where the penalty you took prevented that opportunity.
Right, but I mean, would you argue that it affected the shot?
To be honest, no.
Oh. Okay.
Like,
well,
the penalty occurred, and then, like, you know, it's kind of like how, I mean, we'll use soccer or football as an example, where a tactical foul occurs, but you then play the advantage.
But then the
advantage was taken.
Football's different, right? Because
I know it is.
Because you never go back for an advantage.
Well, you do. Sometimes you'll play an advantage that doesn't develop. But this was an example of where one happened, right?
But yeah.
And in hockey, where it's different, yeah.
Okay. But this is such a weird hypothetical. Well,
regardless, the Vancouver Canucks won 2-1.
Drew O'Connor beat a goalie as a Canuck.
Yes.
He didn't have a defender as well, but that's fine. Like, he beat a goalie.
Yeah, whatever. He's improving. He had an empty net goal the game previous, and now he had the game winner. So, you know, it's all you can ask of him. So now that the Vancouver Canucks have 2 wins, despite the fact that Thatcher Demko should have had back-to-back shutouts, you know, were it not for Edel, the Canucks got to come home to play the Toronto Maple Leafs at a 4 p.m. puck drop. Toronto Maple Leaf fans, they are everywhere, and many do travel, and Vancouver Canucks fans are more than willing to oblige to sell them tickets. It's probably not a difficult team to buy tickets for right now, Canucks. They're not really... or they hadn't been prior to sort of this past week or so, been lighting it up.
Did you see friend of the show PJ's?
Oh yeah, he's been commenting a number of times where these games reinforce how brutal a decision it was not to have the Larkshiders present.
He's a real one. Yeah.
But it was a home game, but like for someone at home watching on TV, it felt kind of like it was in Toronto a few times.
Yeah, I mean, I was watching it in a very loud bar, and when I say that, it was loud because of kids, and the fact that there are so many kids in a bar is upsetting. But yes, so we could hear the like play-by-play, but we couldn't hear any of the crowd, so I didn't even really notice that particularly. But that is the sense I got from people that. But it does happen a lot. Toronto fans do seem to be able to like splash the cash the most, and also like obviously it happens a lot with Oilers games as well. But that's because Edmonton sucks as a city. And so they all move here. So there's lots of Oilers fans here. Everyone knows that. Shout out to the province of Alberta, but yeah.
The Vancouver Canucks and Toronto Maple Leafs fed off the energy. Thatcher Demko got another start, as he should, the way he had been playing. And, everything was copacetic. In the early going, you've got a beautiful setup from Petey to Roenick for the first goal. Vancouver Canucks get the lead. And then all of a sudden, there's a different goaltender at the Vancouver Canucks crease, and the goaltender that started the game isn't on the bench. Hashtag, everyone's worried.
Yeah. Only in Vancouver does everyone pray that the goalie had just
Just needs a number 2.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it doesn't.
It was not a number 2.
No.
Number 2 may have happened, but
unless that's another that's
more number 2.
The lower body injury is like a euphemism, extreme euphemism. But yeah, I mean, Kevin Lankinen came in.
Oh, he played well.
Played very well for a goalie coming in
out
cold.
Exactly. Like he played really, really well. You can't fault him really on the Riley goal, second period. More of a defensive lapse.
Yeah.
Canucks.
I mean, like Canucks had a lot of chances to clear that puck and they didn't. So.
Yeah. Credit to the Vancouver Canucks throughout the game, though, is that they were laying out to try to get in front of every puck. And if a puck was in a dangerous area in front of the net, they did a heck of a good job throwing it to the sideboards or getting it back up the ice. There were times where Kevin Lankinen did appear to be out of position. It's not often as well. There was one shot where he made the save and he looked behind him thinking, it must have gone through me.
Yeah, I did see that.
But, the Vancouver Canucks played, I don't know if the word, like, it's not confident, but maybe competent. And even that, no, but what I mean? Like, it's somewhere in between there.
Right.
Like
the confidence is growing for sure. It didn't look comfortable the last 5 minutes, like, hanging on for dear life. But, I'm okay with that. Like, it's a game against the Leafs. That's like a big high pressure game. And, you're playing without Quinn Hughes. Canucks linchpin. But yeah, Philip Hughes. That's like that's their defensive pairing.
That's what Roenick has evolved into.
But yeah, no, Roenick had a great game, and it's just like we've seen him play competently without Quinn Hughes, but we haven't seen him lead and take over a game like he did against
Marcus Pettersson. We'll talk more about him in half full, half empty. He is the defenseman the Vancouver Canucks have seemingly missed for some time. I hope this continues to be maybe not the case of missing the defenseman, but the defenseman that we've wanted for some time.
Yes.
Continuing forward. Elias Pettersson, Elias Pettersson.
Okay.
It's going to be DPD. MP3, that's Marcus Pettersson. DPD is Elias Pettersson, and PD is Elias Pettersson. The law firm of Pettersson have looked good defensively. The problem is their prosecutor.
But,
not taking too many cases.
Sure. But in the game against the Leafs, we saw a little bit of old PD re-emerging, and that pass.
We did.
Oh, it was a thing of beauty, that pass. And also, Brock Besser's shot was just like, that's the Brock Besser of old.
That's right. The one that's going to sign with another team for some big money.
Or the one that's going to get Canucks a nice return before the deadline.
True. And sign with another team for a big money. Oh man, I get that it's recency bias, but I've always been a fan of Brock. I know you've described him as vanilla.
That's his personality.
But he is the type of player that I feel the Vancouver Canucks have maybe given up a lot of the good out of JT Miller, and now you're going to lose this. I don't know what else you bring in to replace that.
I mean, we'll probably get into it
for another podcast.
Yeah, we'll get into it in half full, half empty for sure.
But Vancouver Canucks hold on to a 2-1 lead. It should have been 3-1. But so when Marcus Pettersson, who had been hanging out in the penalty box, having been called for slashing, which honestly, I don't know if it was the best call, Canucks fan bias and all that jazz. He has a wide open cage. Granted, he's got to take the puck from behind the goal line that he's just retrieved to score. I don't understand how he doesn't get into the net before McMahon gets back there and does whatever he does to prevent it from shooting. And then Toronto brought the puck straight down the ice, and I'm like, I've seen this story before.
Yeah, and I didn't like the ending.
But eventually, the Vancouver Canucks held on, so it must have been a second or third edition where they've updated the ending.
Alternate ending.
The feeling of the pilot group.
Super off the rails real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen the movie Clue?
No.
That's based on the board game Clue, or as
I was going to ask that
we
as a
would
follow-up.
call it in the old country, Cluedo. Fantastic movie, but also has 4 endings, and they released, you would go to the theatre and you would just see one ending and you would have no clue that there was different endings out there. Anyway, just an interesting little movie tidbit.
Okay. Not that it's at all related to the Vancouver Canucks, but hey, it's been a while since we've gone off the rails on an episode of Not Off the Rails. So the Vancouver Canucks got themselves how many points, Anna?
They got 2 points from that game and 6 points from the week.
Correct. And in the last 8, the Vancouver Canucks are 6-1-1. Now, if we were to go and look at those 8 games, 4 of those games, half of them, are in the post-JT Miller era. But I would argue what we're seeing in the last half is a different team, and I'm not talking about player personnel. It's just what we're seeing on the ice from all the players involved than the one previous. Still too far of a sample size, and I'm not trying to imply that JT Miller was what was wrong with the Vancouver Canucks. But we're seeing a team who is smiling, a team who seems to be enjoying the game of hockey. And even in the previous 4 games or even wins prior to that, we weren't really seeing that from the team.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about the pace that they're playing, and the new guys do help, but I do think there is definitely a weight lifted off the team. Especially the last couple of days, there's definitely been rumors about
Which
we're not going to
rumors.
Rumors. You can find them. It's really not that
That's
hard.
what Google's for. Social media, Reddit, it's all over.
Yeah, this is a team that gets talked about a lot. But whatever happened, even if no one was at fault, because if the rumors are true, it's really, really very sad. But let's not get into that. What I do want to say is the situation was messy. Even if no one's at fault, clash of personalities, the situation is now resolved. There is an ending. So even if it's just a case of everyone able to start a new chapter, that's, bound to have a big psychological effect on your team. So.
Yeah, and as we head into the 2-week break that is the Four Nations tournament, guess what, Anna? The Vancouver Canucks currently find themselves above the playoff cutoff, holding on to the second wildcard spot.
Yeah, thank you, Seattle Kraken, for beating the Calgary Flames. They all count. So, we'll take it. For now,
But,
Canucks are a playoff team.
Yeah, and I mean, we're making a mountain out of a molehill here. The Vancouver Canucks have been playing around with the second wildcard spot for a while. But it's much better when you get into a break in the season, especially at this point, to be on the right side of it than the wrong side. Anyhow, you're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by Anna and Chris.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on that.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
A bunch of other stuff actually transpired over the course of the past week. And with the, Four Nations tournament coming up and us not having any Vancouver Canucks to talk about in the coming future, we decided, hey, let's talk about, that other week that was stuff in its own segment, half full, half empty. So probably the biggest news out of it all, Mark Friedman traded to the Nashville Predators for future considerations.
And I'm sure he would like to consider his future in the NHL. So maybe that will happen in Nashville. I really hope it does. He seems to be a thoroughly good guy. He was talked about a lot during the playoffs in the room as just a really positive influence, really great in practice. And when he shows up on the ice, he shows up for his teammates. So, yeah. Cash-wise, that's what, is minimal.
Less than $1 million.
But it's, maybe that means something. But he wasn't counting towards the cap, but I think obviously the big thing is the contract, right? It's just one contract gone, and I do think that's the key, because obviously Wielander, the Wunderkind, sorry to mix a Swedish name and a German expression there, but I think him coming to be signed by Vancouver later in the season will be quite important.
Yeah. Now, one question I have, and this is more rhetorical in its sense, is that why Juleson over Friedman? Not to suggest Friedman makes the Vancouver Canucks considerably better in the blue line, but if there's one thing I recall about his tenure here was that he was a dependable depth piece. And it's been very apparent that Juleson maybe wasn't as dependable as we as Canucks fans would like. He seemed to be good graces of talking.
Yeah, I really don't get Noah Juleson. Seems like a good kid. He tries hard. I can't watch him anymore. I really don't understand. And I haven't really understood for the longest time why he was getting in the lineup above other people. Not to say there's huge competition, but Carson Soucy, who's been pretty damaging, to some extent, I still think he's better than Noah Juleson. And we didn't really get into Carson Soucy playing on his offside, which happened this week. It was funny, I'd completely forgotten that was happening, because I think he was initially going to be scratched and then got inserted into the lineup on his offside. And I was just looking, I was like, who is that player? They look like they're holding their stick in the wrong hand. It just looked wrong, and then I was like, oh, it's Carson Soucy playing on his offside. So it's I never put that much stock into players playing on their offside. I'm just they're hockey players, they can do it, but sometimes it does look weird. He clearly had to think about it, but maybe he's better when he thinks about stuff, Carson Soucy.
Yeah. Regardless, Friedman, peace be with you. We verily knew you. I guess the ancillary news of the week was that the Vancouver Canucks signed Marcus Pettersson to a deal. Guy's in town for only a few days, gets himself a new contract. Brock Besser still waiting. Again, I mean, facetious. Brock Besser, I think we've all accepted.
Yeah.
He's not going to get re-signed by the Vancouver Canucks. That whatever number the Canucks have in mind, they know Brock's going to get more. Brock knows he's going to get more.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be at some point saying peace be with Brock, which is going to be unfortunate. But Pettersson signed a 6-year deal. And as Canucks fans, Anna, we've been through many of these longer year, contracts to players getting into their mid-30s. So
yeah,
when
JT, is that you?
I heard the 6 year, I'm like, oh, but it's arguably a tidy piece of business. Marcus Pettersson is only going to be paid an AAV of 5.5 over the course of 6 years. And it's not like a 6 year no trade or even a modified no trade for 6 years. He's got a modified no trade that kicks in at year 4 through 5 and 6. And that, yes, means he's a Canuck for the foreseeable future in regards to the next 3 years. It, I think, provides some stability to then go to someone else who's under contract for the next 3 years in Quinn Hughes to say, hey, is this working out? And if for some reason everything goes askew and the Vancouver Canucks need to go and blow things up, there's an out.
Yeah, and plus...
I don't want that to happen.
No, I agree. But, like, worst comes to worst, right? You do have him signed to a pretty balanced figure if Canucks need to blow things up in the future. You can just say, like... We have this very controlled asset of a defenseman.
Yeah, and I should qualify. Quinn Hughes is actually only 2 more years beyond this season. So technically, Pettersson will have 1 additional year before the MTC is there, as opposed to the NTC that he's going to be sitting on. But my point remains is that if the Canucks need to make changes, there is some flexibility. But the number seems reasonable. If he turns out to be what we've been seeing, considering what Tyler Myers was getting paid previously.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, he's getting paid half that amount, and we're still like, eh.
Okay. We got to give Myers credit. He's actually been an improved player since
oh,
he
yeah,
got put
big
in his
time.
timeout box.
Big time. I agree. Like, it's just like, is he a $3 million player? Maybe.
Okay,
but anyway, the quibble, he's definitely much better value.
Tyler Myers. Okay, let's think about this further. So we know our top pairing is Quinn and Phillip when both are healthy. We'd have to imagine that right now the second pairing is potentially Myers Pettersson.
Yep.
Right? And if Tyler continues to play the way he has been playing, that's a good value at $3 million. That's a respectable second pair.
It's when you get down to
question mark
third pairing that may be.
Well, okay.
Because your
DPD has
but
started to impress.
Yeah, it's just more
I don't know who we're pairing with him, but
Susie on the other side.
Well, which we'll talk about in a moment.
But that's probably the best option. I'm sorry, we've seen flashes of Derek Fulbert, and he has had extenuating circumstances, but I think it's been a failed experiment, like Deane.
Yeah, I do prefer a player like Susie with DPD. I feel you pair a young player with a stalwart veteran.
Yeah, although even PD's game sense is really quickly growing to the NHL level, has to be said.
I mean, who would be nice to have on this roster? Luke Schenn.
Oh, yeah. We miss Luke Schenn. I mean, who knows what would have happened in this year.
Chris Tanev?
Yeah, but Luke Schenn, do you think he would have sorted some of that nonsense out? Maybe.
Sorting would have happened. There would have been sorting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It wouldn't have had to have been up to Braden to do the sorting. Okay, I know we're getting into rumors, but it's interesting that the game where Braden did some sorting is also allegedly a game where something
occurred.
Anyhow, yeah. And actually, there are rumors around it, but what has been broadcast by media is something.
Yes, exactly. That's almost like what we do know, right?
Mm-hmm. We just don't know what the something is. Oh. Just that something happened. Susie. So the Vancouver Canucks have apparently sent out a league-wide memo. Yeah. They've posted on that, bulletin board that they have at the NHL head office that Carson Susie is available.
Hopefully there's a picture of his face on that.
I don't know. They send it by fax, probably.
But, if it's just a big picture of his face with a very small, his stats written very small, especially the ones from this year written very small. Mm-hmm. Maybe the ones from last year are a little bigger.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Carson Soucy, who, to be traded, would need to waive his no trade. So it's not like the Vancouver Canucks can say, hey, whoever wants to take him, here he is. They're currently saying, hey, anyone who wants him, we'd be willing to let you talk to him.
Yeah,
maybe.
let's have a chat.
Is apparently on the block. I
have a feeling it's more like you say, just seeing what's out there rather than we're trading him. I mean, one for sure, like he has to agree, like you say, but yeah.
Well, he's one more year. He's 3.2,
which
3.25.
he was played above that level last year.
He
for
was.
Sure.
This has been a down year. Let's say, okay, in the hypothetical scenario that the Vancouver Canucks were to trade him, presuming they're not getting a defenseman back,
right?
Are we saying that Forbort's our guy? Is it Mancini? Is Noah getting a run with D-Petey?
Like Noah Jolson and Elias Pettersson, just like that's terrifying to me. Like, what effect is that going to have on D-Petey? I can't imagine it's a good one.
Maybe D-Petey can make Jolson look good. D-Petey's been playing some sheltered minutes too. Like,
yes,
let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's not.
But that's why I'm just like, he's developing and he's developing quickly. He needs a good teacher. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard because I do, like, I get it. Like, if you can get a good return for Carson Soucy, he's clearly not playing up to his contract. But yeah, it's still a long season left to go without a third pairing, effectively.
And a team who arguably is in the playoff picture, right? You make a trade like this, you're reducing your blue line depth, which, as a Vancouver Canucks fan, if you've known and followed the team long enough, is never something you wish to do. You want as much blue line depth as you could possibly imagine, plus 3 more guys.
Especially when your goalie, who's been very injury prone, is maybe injured again, maybe not, but at least
hopefully not the knee. Hopefully not the.
Rick Tocchet says it's not the knee.
Patootie muscle.
His Popeye muscle, hopefully, is not injured. But yeah, like, he's coming back into his own. He does not need, Canucks defensive coverage to collapse on him again.
Quinn Hughes obviously is out right now. He is not going to the Four Nations.
Praise be.
News actually broke, earlier today. Someone asked me, like, hey, Chris, are you disappointed about this? I'm like, to be honest, as a Canadian, not really. As a Canucks fan, definitely not.
Definitely not. I mean, it's very easy to me to say because I don't have a dog in the fight, either American Bull Terrier or, I don't know what a Canadian dog is. Husky?
Beaver.
It's not a dog, but sure.
Newfoundland.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Although they're friendly. Big friendly dogs.
Yeah. But either way.
That's pretty much what Canadians are.
Yeah.
Big and friendly people.
Yeah. Like, I just don't care about international tournaments. Like, I don't know if I'm going to watch anything. Like, I'll definitely catch highlights and clips and stuff, but I don't think I'll be sitting down to watch full games. Like, I just don't care. So it's very easy for me to say, but I just want, like, whenever the Premier League or the Women's Super League goes on international breaks, I just go, just bring our Arsenal players back healthy. So that's all I want. So Quinn needs a break. Like, even if he wasn't injured, he's been carrying this team for months by himself, plus all the drama. I'm sure it will be very beneficial for him not to be playing competitive games for 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm perfectly happy with Quinn taking a break. As far as the Four Nations, I think for me it feels manufactured. Like, there's no emotional connection, and as a result, I'm not in a really all that care mode.
It's an Olympics light, right? Because they haven't got to play the Olympics yet, and if all goes well, and that's the idea. I get it. It still feels weird. But yeah, if Pettersson can go on a run with his little Swedish friends, great.
Well, okay, on that note, do you think Team Sweden is going to play an offensively minded game that will allow Petey to be Petey, because there is some thought that one of the reasons we're seeing Pettersson lose sort of the offensive prowess is that, Tocchet's system is about puck possession, making the right play at the right time. And if there's someone out there that wants to strive to perfection, tell me it's someone other than Elias Pettersson.
Yeah.
Right? Like he is probably doing it to the extent that I commented on social media. I mean, what are we seeing from Petey right now? A lot of Henrik. What we want from Petey, a lot more Daniel.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to say Henrik didn't have the offensive game. He did. But when the Twins were around on the ice together,
yeah,
Daniel was the offensive, Henrik was the playmaking center, and we're seeing the playmaking. Petey makes plays.
Yeah, he draws penalties, and he has the defensive side down. But yeah, you're right. I have no idea what Swedish style of play is, so we'll see. But it could be very good for him. Just a change of scene. Playing some fun hockey without consequence, right? It's not that important who wins the Four Nations, I don't think. Sorry.
Yeah, one of the Four Nations will.
We hope.
Yeah.
Presume.
It would be a shame if they didn't. Speaking of the Four Nations, the 2-week break and all of that jazz, it's also here in the province of British Columbia, at least next week, Family Day. Yeah, it's a long weekend. As is our podcast practice, we generally take long weekends off. That means you will not have an episode of C4 next week. You'll have to wait 2 weeks to hear us come back and then set up the week that will be, because the NHL break is 2 weeks in length. When we come back to talk Vancouver Canucks in 2 weeks' time, they will be setting up to take on the
Vegas.
The Vegas game will have happened when we record.
That's true.
The Utah game will have happened.
Oh yeah, can we do a quick off the rails on Utah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
How they already had to change one of the 3 names in the fan vote?
Yeah. What's your pick? So, I mean, originally the fan vote was between Utah Hockey Club, Utah Mammoth, and Utah Wasatch. Is that how you say it?
Wasatch.
Which is a mountain range, I believe. Because, unfortunately, the Yeti name, they lost the fight with the Yeti Cooler people. Apparently, the Stanley Cooler Cup people aren't as litigious because,
Well, in fairness, the Stanley Cup was longer than Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
But anyhow.
But I think the Wasatch part did so badly that they said, oh, just kidding.
Now it's Outlaws?
And now it's Outlaws. What is your pick?
To be honest, I'm kind of leaning towards Hockey Club out of those 3 choices.
Me too. I do think it's really funny. I was just oh, well, we can't have them be Hockey Club forever. Yeti's a really cool name. Now Yeti's out of the picture. I do think Hockey Club is a funny name.
Yeah.
I get that people don't want it, but I thought Washington should have just kept football teams, so. And the NFL, it's just so against the NHL and North American sports in general that I would find it incredibly funny.
Yeah. Anywho, the Vancouver Canucks will be taking on the Golden Knights in the Utah Hockey Club. We'll be able to recap those games on our next episode and then get into the continued week that will be as they remain out on the road. Because, heck, the Vancouver Canucks have the weird schedule. They're out on the road for a bunch. Their next home game is sometime in March. I wonder what Rogers Arena is going to be up to. Is there much of the Invictus games taking part? I know the closing ceremonies.
I think so. I mean, they have, I think the Convention Centre, BC Place, Rogers, I believe, are their venues, and then Whistler.
Yeah.
I heard that the concert was actually really good yesterday.
Yeah. So if you haven't been following, so the Invictus Games are being hosted here in Vancouver. Opening ceremonies were this past Saturday, last night. Originally, the opening ceremonies were going to be in the Convention Centre, but due to the popularity of the event, they then moved into BC Place. It was a lower bowl from what I could tell, but a really sizable crowd, great concert. Yeah.
Like, not my...
By all accounts, it sounded real good.
Sort of my type of people necessarily, but apparently they put it on a good show. Prince Harry was
they
there.
got bare naked ladies in the closing ceremony, so...
That sounds more up my street. I'd like that.
I don't imagine Steve Page will be there, so we're not talking like Juno's reunion style bare naked ladies, but
You know.
BNL's BNL.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. But yeah, if you've reached this point of the show, we are going to be taking a week break, holiday, Four Nations, all that jazz. You'll listen to us again in 2 weeks' time. If you want to stay in touch with Anna and I, though, over the course of that break, the best way to do it is to join C4 Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast. Alternatively, you can go into social media and start talking to us there. We're at the C4 podcast on X, Twitter, whatever the heck it's called these days. We're at the real C4 podcast on Threads and C4podcast.com on Blue Sky, because heaven forbid we try to keep it the same. But I hold the social media platforms being the problem, not us.
Yeah, it's definitely not us.
No. But Anna, any final words of wisdom for all of our listeners this week?
We both love hockey, but it's been an exhausting season with all the off-ice drama. And yeah, like I said, don't really care about international hockey, so I think I'm going to enjoy a little time off from, putting my heart on the line every couple of days watching Canucks, so I think it'll be nice.
Final words of wisdom from me. Whitecaps FC season starts pretty darn quick. Just saying.
Is Ryan Reynolds going to buy the team?
That's a hot rumor that a nice, reputable publication in the UK called The Mirror.
I know. I can't believe someone made me click on a Mirror story.
First and foremost, the Vancouver Whitecaps FC are for sale. Ownership is looking to divest themselves of the franchise. A lot of worry because there's no brick and mortar that ties the team to Vancouver. So the concern is, happening to the Vancouver Grizzlies team could be bought by someone moved. So everyone's like, Ryan Reynolds, come save us. Ryan actually owns 2 football clubs. He owns Wrexham, and he owns a club he's part of an ownership group of a club in Mexico.
I didn't know that part.
Man, I always forget about that. Like he's much more, front of house in Wrexham than he is in the
and obviously he maybe doesn't have as good PR in the last 6 months as he had previously. Yeah. Like he was pretty squeaky clean before that. So, but money
Lots
is money
of right now.
And he's definitely, if he was part of an ownership group, you have to say that the team would be staying.
Oh yeah, if Reynolds is involved, I can't imagine it would be moving. But again, time will tell. And heaven forbid the Mirror ever be wrong about anything, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, on behalf of Anna, A4603, myself, Chris at Lightforce, signing off this episode with We Out.